स्पेस के बारे में बात हुई.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would
And
request
Aryabhatta
you
University is
all to
particularly
please be
focusing
seated
a lot on space. अभी
so that we
recently
can
आपका
start
seminar
the
भी हुआ
first
था एक
session
space के
of the
ऊपर. I
day.
know about it.
There are a couple of empty seats right in front, so might as well. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all on behalf of SIA-INDIA to India Space Congress 2026. And I request you all to please be seated so that we can start the first session of the day. And that is all about reframing space from enabling layer to critical infrastructure, securing national resilience and defense readiness. That's going to be one of a session. And I would now do a little bit brief on why India must treat space assets as core national infrastructure, covers continuity planning, sovereign redundancy, secure operations, strategic autonomy, and protection of essential services. To head that out, I would request our respected moderator, Colonel K.V. Kuber, Director Aerospace and Defense, to come to the IDSA. And I would also want all our speakers for today, Major General Dr. Sandeep Sharma, he's on his way, will be joining us soon. Dr. Radha Krishna Ganti, Professor IIT Madras, and we have more esteemed speakers. Ms. Khyati Singh, Research Analyst is MP IDSA. Mr. Saikrishna, CEO of Saptang Labs, again, he's on his way and he will be joining us soon. I now officially open the floor, sir. Over to you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Although I think we are a small audience, maybe it's a quality audience. So while the other two speakers are on the way, and I hope they join very soon, I'll just give a small prelude since we have some time. And you see, for decades, space has been viewed primarily as an enabling layer, supporting communication, navigation, weather forecasting, remote sensing, etc. However, that paradigm has fundamentally changed. It has now become a critical infrastructure, and that's what we're going to discuss today. Virtually every aspect of modern society depends upon space assets. Financial transactions rely on precise timing signals. Telecommunications depend on satellite networks. Disaster management relies on Earth observation system. Military operations increasingly depend on space-enabled intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, positioning, navigation, secure communications, and missile warning capabilities. And I think most of us sitting here know exactly what happened on the first night of Operation Sindoor, and how space was so effectively used in various targeting. And I think we're not going to speak much about that today, but for India, this conversation is sort of timely. I think we should talk about it. We are witnessing the rapid expansion of our space ecosystem through ISRO, InSpace, NSIL, defense space initiatives, private sector innovation, and a growing constellation of commercial and strategic space capabilities. As India aspires to become a leading space power, the question is no longer whether we should invest in space, but how we secure, protect, operationalize space infrastructure as a strategic national asset. Today's discussion, therefore, will examine how India can transition from viewing space as a support function to recognizing it as a critical national infrastructure one that must be resilient, secure, trusted, and integrated into our national security infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm tempted to quote from the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and I think I want to quote this because it's so apt today. Natumam shakshase drishtvam anena iva swachakshusa. With your own eyes, swachakshusa, with your own eyes. Natumam shakshase drishtvam. You will not be able to see me. This is what Lord says. Lord Krishna says, you will not be able to see me with the eyes that you have. Divyam dadami te chakshu. I am giving you the divine sight. Divyam dadami. I am giving you the divine sight. Divyam chakshu. I am giving you. Divyam dadami te chakshu. Pashyame yogameshwaram. Space is our divya chakshu. Space is India's divya chakshu. Then the question before us is, how do we ensure that this vision remains resilient, protected, sovereign, and available when the nation needs it most? Space security, resilience, and defense preparedness are ultimately about continuous action and preparedness, not waiting for a crisis. Nations invest in resilient infrastructure not because the conflict is certain, but because responsible stewardship demands readiness. This verse, Divyam Dadami Te Chakshu, captures the philosophy of building capabilities today without being driven solely by immediate concerns. More than 5,000 years ago, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna faced uncertainty amidst complexity. Lord Krishna's response was not merely to give him answers, but it was to give him a vision. I think that vision is required for the nation today. Divyam dadani te chakshu. I grant you the divine sight. I would like to position the discussion at the intersection of national security, economic resilience, and strategic autonomy. The title itself is powerful because it signals a paradigm shift. It's no longer an enabler of terrestrial activities. It has become a critical infrastructure whose disruption can degrade military operations, economic activity, governance, disaster response, communications, navigation, financial systems, and national resilience. We have an exceptional panel. So what I will do is, before I come to the IIT professor sitting on my left, Dr. Radha Krishna Ganti, what I think I want to, I think I want to shift to the younger lot, and therefore I think I want to call up Mrs. Khyati Singh. See, Khyati, yadyata charati sreshtaha tasta deve sarojana. You know, Lord Krishna again says, yadyata charati sreshtaha tasta deve sarojana sayad pramanam kurute lokasta anuvartate. Just as a leader does, yadyata charati sreshta, sreshta jo hai, as a leader does, so will the nation follow. I want to put it in that spirit here. As long as the government of India is able to have this vision and put it forward and invest in space, not for immediate concerns, but for long-term resilience, with proper policies and procedures in place, I think we are going nowhere. So I would like you to dwell on this as to how the policy is shaping. Is it shaping in the manner that we want it? Is there something that we can do more about it? What about the public-private partnerships, the defense space industrial ecosystem, national space security strategy, and space traffic management? Over to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is Ms. Khyati Singh, fellow from MP IDSA. All yours.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for that introduction and setting the tone for today's discussion. Once I start talking about space, I would like you to imagine, or just keep in mind two different pictures. The first, where we remember with pride, in August 2023, Chandrayaan-3 landed near the lunar South Pole. which is a feat that no other nation could achieve at a very, simple price of $75 million. United States take a budget bigger than that just to make a movie about space. So we were able to accomplish that with such a small amount of number and such a great feat. Extraordinary results, frugal engineering, the genius of Indian space story. However, on the other side, the story is the one that we have not noticed enough. In March, the final atomic clock aboard one of our IRNS satellites failed. And Navik, our sovereign positioning system and constellation meant to free us from foreign signals, slipped below operational strength. No explosion, and that's why nobody noticed. A clock simply stopped, and a piece of our strategic autonomy went quietly dark. So I place these two images side by side deliberately. Chandrayaan is what looks like when India treats space as a program. Navik is what it looks like when we have not yet decided to treat it as a strategic critical infrastructure. Something you do not merely build and celebrate, but garrison, sustain, and defend. So my thesis today is really simple. India built a magnificent space program for the 20th century. The decision before us now is whether we keep funding space as a technology program or finally resource it as a strategic national capability. And the clearest example or a rival that we should look at is China, of course the elephant in the room, but we have to keep ourselves aware of the surrounding of the rival nations that we are going to fight these domains in. So China is an interesting case study, not just because it is a threat, but because it made deliberately exactly the transition that I'm urging you to debate today. It now fields a military reconnaissance constellation past 500 satellites built in barely a decade, alongside the world's most comprehensive counter-space portfolio. But notice how its Shijian-21 satellite towed a defunct Baidu satellite to graveyard orbit. So officially, it looks like that is a debris mitigation operation, but operationally, it is a proof that you can move a civilian spacecraft or another spacecraft which is not of your country. So this is a capability that you have developed. And it is not by accident. Most of these capabilities start projecting themselves in the civilian uniform, that this is a civil exercise, we are doing it in a civilian space. But this is a capability that you have acquired, and it can be in future used in the defense domain as well. So Beijing has grasped that in space, ambiguity is the weapon. The most useful capability is the one that is deniable, reversible, and impossible to attribute. And space inverts our land border instincts as well. In orbit, there is no terrain to hold, and the line between an inspector satellite and a co-orbital weapon is a matter of intent, not of appearance. So attribution, the foundation of all the deterrence that we are talking about, can be deliberately denied. When your signal is spoofed mid-operation, the jammer carries no flag. So when we ask ourselves this question, in March, when our clock failed, how quickly could we have ruled out that it was made to fail? Against that silent threat, deterrence by punishment, which is a theory that if you are going to attack me, I'll attack you back, is weak, because it needs the proof of an adversary engineer's way. What works instead for us is deterrence by denial and resilience. Capability is so distributed that degrading it is not worth the attempt, and that carries a sharp consequence. If our navigation signal were spoofed at scale along the line of actual control tomorrow, and attribution were ambiguous, who in our entire architecture holds the authority to decide a red line has been crossed? Capability without a decision maker is not deterrence. It is expensive hardware which is waiting for a committee or an approval that would come from somewhere. So that is why Navik's failure should haunt us more than any Chinese launch. Positioning, navigation, and timing, these are the keystone. Pull it out, and guided munitions lose precision, network lose synchronization, and civilian systems like banking, power, telecom, timed off satellite signals begin to fail, in ways that the public sector would never realize. So when we are talking and preparing about any calamity, war-like situation, our only instinct is to keep the civilian space guarded. But this is how we are also exposing it. So when we let Navik drift below the strength over a single component because we funded sovereignty as a project to be completed rather than a capability to be sustained. Sovereignty built once and then under-resourced is just a sovereignty on paper. It doesn't translate into action. For instance, only yesterday, Anthropic declared that the US government said that we are not going to allow the Opus 5 model of Anthropic for other nations. Imagine during the peak hours of Operation Sindoor, we were outsourcing a lot, we were getting a lot of imagery from private institutions like Maxar, which are US-based firms. What if in the middle of the war, it suddenly releases a document that no private association or company within the United States is allowed to sell off their imageries to any country? And it can very well do that. Where do we stand then amidst the war? Who do we rely on? We can only rely on our own systems. That is why when we talk about strategic autonomy, it has to exist in all the domains and especially space, because space is the infrastructure on which the larger infrastructures are relying. So we have to guard it on that way. And when we talk about the economy part of it, the space is racing. The space, we all know the numbers are really big. It is $1.8 trillion by 2035 that the space economy would grow to that bigger number. But what is our investment in space? It is a number we cannot even, mention somewhere. It is just 0.65% of our GDP, which goes to defense. And then a certain smaller part of it goes down to research and space. That is the number we are talking about against that bigger problem. So we also have to reconfigure our economics towards, space assets, that what are we developing? It requires a lot of funding as well. Because we have already seen we have the capability, we have the know-how, we know how to do it. We have already proved it over and over again with limited budgets. We have produced brilliant results. But are we able to translate that kind of capability into a sustained effort where it is just not a newspaper headline that ISRO could do this, we could achieve it. It has to be a capability which we are able to sustain for long, upgrade it, and use it over time and position it in a way that is no longer a weakness for it. Rather, it is a point of strength. So that is where India is opening in an order which is constantly being split between a US-led model and a Chinese-led model. We have our way, because if we have hold our strategic autonomy so dear to us for that longer period, we have also given in so much to defend our strategic autonomy on so many grounds. So we should not leverage that at a crucial juncture like this or slip into either of the blocks, because we know it wouldn't prove very beneficial to us in the longer run. So the only alternative or the only option for us is to build our systems sovereignly, defend them, and sustain them for a future scenario, and also help like-minded countries. If really we want to pitch ourselves as a pole in the third world, it also takes on to us to acquire that leadership, take on that space, and put that mission forward that India is here to help democracies alike who are not willing to participate in the race that is going on between US and China and really want to develop their nation further. So finally, this is a real serious problem, which is not the problem of technology. It is what we do with our technology, what is our vision with technology, and how far are we willing to move with it. So the answer is completely stated there, that we will not be the nations whose sovereignty goes dark because the clock stopped and no one is watching. We have to aspire to be the nation that is constantly on its feet, trying to achieve and will achieve in the near future the capabilities that is still it is relying on a lot of other countries, but that should be the mission and the vision that should define the coming century. And we can't wait for other countries or another attack or another Operation Sindoor-like situation to tell us that this might be a problem tomorrow. It is very much a problem, and the only solution is that we take this capability seriously, we start building it, investing in it, and stop our dependence on countries or private institutions, because we never know when these assets are compromised. Thank you so much.
Good, Khyati. Thank you very much for that. You know, you started off so well with the excellent example of Chandrayaan, and you put it all down with the atomic clock going, stopping. And I think so. And, you talked about funding as a technology program or for strategic autonomy, and in the process, you made a few motherhood statements. So, as a researcher, what do you think should be the first step? What should we do now? What do you think should be the first thing that the policy should shape? And in what manner? What do you think about it?
Policy step.
Okay, then put it
Hello.
directional.
So firstly, I would say the first part of policy designing is to accept that it is flawed and accept that there are gaps in the policy that we should look at and then figure out what is wrong with it on each of these stages. For instance, if we are not investing enough, why are we not investing enough? Why our reliance on such systems which are not based in our country so much?
So, Khyati, can I stop you and ask, who's this we? We are not investing. Who's this we?
We are the policy makers, the government, the stakeholders, many of us in the room. Are we voicing that concern enough? For instance, if I come from academics, am I writing enough for the people to pick it on that yes, this is a problem? It's been constantly written about. At a lot of times I've seen in policy writing or in writing these papers, we tend to do a very, line which is in accordance with the policy which is already established and try to say that all thing is hunky-dory going good because we don't want criticism that might affect us the wrong way.
That's the problem with democracies these days. Democracies are not accepting criticism.
Exactly.
You see? So, when you say the policy is flawed, just pick up one aspect of the policy and let's try and see as to what we can do about it.
The number one aspect I would say is too much people invested that nobody wants to take the fall. And we are not ready for failures. We do not believe that failure should come in handy. We should be accepting of, every time we are designing, developing something, nobody wants to take the failure on themselves, so they would just keep delaying the project. Because once failure comes, the government or the people, the stakeholders will ask why. And we have to invest in failures at times because once we fail, we learn and then we move on and make it better. So the part of success is failure.
How should India balance strategic competition with international competition?
We, I guess, so far have managed to make our way through strategic autonomy, but we cannot just develop a lot of things on our own because by the time we develop it, it's already a step ahead in other countries. And we have to constantly match and then we fall back.
Right.
So we have to figure out a way that we do not compromise on our sovereignty, co-development, co-innovation in a way that we are not compromising our IPR rights. A lot of time it happens that even our IPR rights are compromised, our product is on almost at the final stage and then we get the investors or the foreign aid in. It has to be either right from the scratch that we are co-developing, or if that is not happening, then at the final stage, it is of no use that we are inviting the foreign delegations.
Khyati, thank you so much. It's been so nice that you brought out all this. Ladies and gentlemen, a good round of applause for Khyati for bringing out that the policy is flawed. Let's look at what is there in the policy. Let us look at those points and let's people like Khyati to write a lot and shape the policy by that. But then, Khyati, I want to bring out something that you said. The signals are spoofed and, deterrence by denial, and you talked about sovereignty. And one of the greatest examples of sovereignty, if I were to give you all today, I will have to take you back to Kurukshetra. And if you know what happened in the Kurukshetra war, Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthira Nakulasa Devascha Sugosha Manipushpako. So, Sahadeva, his conch's name was Manipushpaka. And Sahadeva was a great astronomer. Some of you who are students of Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata, you would know, he was a great astronomer. Between the two forces, strategic autonomy of space was held with the Pandavas. He knew exactly where the constellations, where the stars are moving, where the constellations get positioned, what should be the timing. You know, there was a time before the war started, Duryodhana went up to Sadeva and asked him, because, you know, he is the astrologer. He knows everything. So he says, yeah, you know, I know that you're the astrologer, but he came to him. Duryodhana from the other side came to Sadeva and said, you're an astrologer, you tell me, what should be the time that I should start the war so that I can win? And you know, Sadeva actually gave him the advice because he is an astronomer. He couldn't care. He was true to his profession. He was just true to his profession and he said, this is the time. And then, of course, we have Lord Krishna who manipulated time in a way that it could not start at that point in time, and therefore that entire Bhagavad Gita and all that the preaching which happened out there. But you know, when you talk about signals, spoofing, deterrence, and you know, when you talk about these things, I'm inclined to get back to, and you talked about IPR, IP and IPR. I really don't like the word IPR. I more like the word IP, because that R can be withdrawn at any time. So I'm very much skeptical about that particular R over there, and therefore I think in our DAP also, the Defense Acquisition Procedures, we are using ownership. We are talking about ownership of IPs. We are not talking about IPR. We are not talking about rights. So, Dr. Radhakrishna, you know, I have Dr. Radhakrishna Ganti, a professor from IIT Madras, and for all of you who know IIT Madras, any foreign delegation that comes or anybody who comes, they first go and visit IIT Madras. And then, of course, they visit other IITs and they look at. But IIT Madras has got its fame on this entire, you know, 5G, 6G, 7G. I mean, they can go anywhere because they have developed so many IPs around that, and they have developed such capabilities around communication and communication infrastructures. So, Professor Ganti, as satellite constellations become larger and more interconnected, how should we think about resilience from a systems engineering perspective? Would you like to go there? Oh, okay. Yeah. Professor always likes to stand and talk.
First, I would like to thank the organizers for having me here. This is the first time I'm coming to any space conference. I'm a 5G person. I work in wireless communication. My expertise is in communications, and slowly I'm trying to get into satellite and other things, and they called me here. So thank you for making me here. Okay. So the first time I'm meeting Khyati, I already like her thoughts so much. I'll tell you a little bit of background. I think you should understand how telecom works and why we should be very, very careful with satellites, and then I'll come to answer Sar's question. So India is a big market for telecom. All of you agree with this, 5G, 4G, and previously 3G. Most of you don't know that up to 4G, we have imported 99% of our equipment. Telecom infrastructure, what you call as infrastructure, secure infrastructure, okay? That should be resilient. So at that point when we had the skirmish on the northern border, that's when government started realizing, oh, it's not such a good idea that we don't have our capability of developing these systems in-house, okay? And networks, we are talking about network infrastructure, satellite infrastructure. So when you say an infrastructure, it's not just a single satellite or a single base station. You're talking about a pan-India system, okay? So this is a lot of business, and there are so many security implications on this. So now, in this telecommunication world, India is trying to actively get into developing its own systems, developing its IPR, developing standards. But you know, what is the problem? The problem is we were too late, okay? It's an enormous effort at this juncture to first change our mindset. Forget about anything else. The mindset that we can develop complex systems, that they work, okay? That itself is a huge task. Then followed by developing those products and convincing people that, okay, use Indian products in infrastructure, forget about cell phones, Okay? So it's a war, effectively it's a war in India that's happening, and I can talk about this in telecom infrastructure for hours. I mean, I'm part of this game, so from the last 15 years. So we fight this war at ITU, we fight this war at 3GPP, we fight this war in-house, developing these products, ensuring that the government takes them. I mean, this is a big thing. Satellite industry is just starting. Okay, we are just at the beginning of satellite industry in India. Effectively, effectively that's what is happening. We had ISRO that launches a few satellites. We are very, very happy about this. As Khyati pointed out, it's a technology, it's a demonstration of technology. Okay, getting from there to infrastructure, use the word infrastructure, pan-India infrastructure is a different, completely different game altogether. Okay. So when we are doing this, we should be extremely, extremely be careful. My suggestion is that given, we should not repeat what has happened in telecom infrastructure. We should be very, very careful when we make our paths. Specifically our engagement with MNCs and other things, we should encourage them, they should be part of our infrastructure, but at the same time, we should have the capability of developing them, and a lot larger part of the ecosystem should be within India. It's very, very important for a sovereign thing. I'll tell you one more example. At this point, in IITs, across IITs and IISc, you'll find a lot of aeronautical engineers, okay? Because there is aeronautical branches, people can go and find, and people can build rockets. But if you go and ask in the communication area, where your satellites are for communication, your satellites are for radars and other things, if you ask, how many faculty are working in this area of communication for satellites or radars, the answer will be you can count on on this hand, okay? So we are not ready there. We are not ready in terms of the scientific scaling, the engineering scaling, we are not ready. So this is something that has to be part of your policy. Satellites are not just rockets. When you talk about satellite infrastructure, it's just not sending rockets, projectiles onto space and then forgetting about it. It's something much more deeper. You require cyber security experts, you require people who understand processing, you understand GPUs, who understand communications. All of them have to get together across the country and start thinking about this problem. Elon Musk was able to do it. He had money, so he made more money. Okay? That's a positive loop. That's a positive loop that goes on. Now people are talking about Starlink. I'm really frightened that Starlink is going to come to India and we are going to be in a bad shape. Okay? So anyway, coming back to Sir's question, what is resilience? Okay? So people are confused robustness with resilience. Okay? So whatever ISRO does are robust systems. They are single systems which don't fail. That is not resilience. Resilience is when it fails, what is our backup? Is the failure catastrophic? Okay? Is there a graceful degradation in your performance? Okay? That is what resilience is. And that is what infrastructure systems are. In infrastructure systems, things do fail. Base stations fail. When base stations fail, there are mechanisms to handle that in a graceful manner so that you don't see any effect. You don't even know that a base station failed. But when a satellite failed, point is our PNT satellite, we are left in a lurch, okay? That's not a good thing. So when we build resilient systems, we have to think about the whole system architecture as a whole. It's not single satellite, it's not a single communication protocol. What are our fallback mechanisms? How do we develop this? Okay, and this is something that's very, very critical given that there's a lot of strategic utilization for this satellite systems. Okay, unlike telecom also there is, but satellites do play a much more prominent role in that. So one of the most important things is the number of Indian satellites by the total number of satellites in the world is almost 0. Okay, so the first thing is we should launch thousands of satellites, LEO satellites. Okay. So when you also start thinking about this resilience and robustness, the price automatically comes down. If you want a system that never fails, it's going to be expensive. But if you want a system that fails and you have an option, if it fails also nothing happens to the overall infrastructure, then the cost automatically goes down, and that gives opportunities to the Indian startups to get in. Okay? If you want a chip that never fails in 100 years, India is not there. But if you are okay with a chip that fails in 10 years, and you have a program where you fly a satellite every 5 years, then we are in a good shape. Okay? So this is a problem that we faced in telecom. The companies that came from the West had hundreds of years of experience. So how does a company that started in India right now, about 5 years back, how can it compete with these global giants? How do you do that? Okay? So I think there's a lot of learning that has to be done from both these communities. And going forward, by the way, 6G is all about non-terrestrial networks, which is satellites. Hundreds of satellites are going to be launched by our Geos and Airtels. So this is going to become a big mess until some policy, clear policy about how do you handle this in terms of security, resilience, and other things are taken at this moment. Okay, this is going to come. It's happening. There's no question about it. It's a question about what is our place in it. Are we going to own that, or are we just going to utilize that? This is a call we should make. Okay, I'll answer other questions later. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Radha Krishna. So, you see, you've raised too many questions now. So, I think the fundamental characteristic of a professor is to raise more questions than to provide answers. So I think that way you've done very well. So that's nice. So let's see some questions. Can a distributed architecture reduce strategic vulnerability?
Absolutely. You take the case of internet, okay? So this is one thing I want to tell you. If ISRO launches the same satellite 1,000 times, 1,000 satellites, the same vulnerability is going to exist in all the 1,000. So if a hacker gets into one, he can get into other things. So that is not resilience. Why is internet so resilient against hackers? Hackers quite often do DNS, denial of service attacks. They get down routers, get down switches. But why can't they get down the entire internet in one shot? Because everything is so heterogeneous. You can get a Cisco router, but an Aruba router may not have the same flaw. Similarly, having a distributed system where you have heterogeneous combination of things, that is very critical. The same system, most probably, it's not like 100%, most probably will have the same flaw. Okay, so it's very important that distributed systems are always known to be very resilient to attacks, because one thing is the attacks are generally localized, and second thing is that the distributed nature of the thing helps us to even if one node goes down, other things can take over that function, and you have a seamless experience.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting thing, sir, that you talked about. So tell me, how can AI improve the whole thing? Does AI have a role? Can it improve the autonomy over here? Can it create a more robust and resilient autonomous satellite operations?
Yeah, AI is a double-edged sword. Okay, so from operational perspective, when you fly 30,000 satellites in a constellation, I don't think any human being or any program can control it. You require some kind of intelligence. I wouldn't rate current AI as intelligent, okay, but it's like a first-year grad student. So as long as you do a good job of mentoring it, it can work 24/7 and do something. So coming back to this question, so it's going to play a role. What is going to play a role? It's going to play a role in operational activities. It's going to monitor things, okay, help you understand if things are getting out of hand somewhere. It will warn you. But finally, humans are required. I don't think another 10, 15 years we have our jobs intact.
Thank you, sir. So you see, you talked about the distributed nature and the number of satellites that can be launched that can improve resilience. It's a very wonderful example that you gave about the internet. But can you tell us also that what are those critical technologies that would define a resilient space infrastructure?
Okay. So one thing that all of us understand is we're flying so many satellites, but the spectrum is limited. Okay, spectrum still comes from DOT. Okay, the spectrum is still limited. Good spectrum is still limited. So one of the things that we're going to see when you fly the satellites is inter-satellite communication. Okay, how can two satellites communicate with each other directly? So this inter-satellite links are going to play a very critical role. Okay, already I think Europe is trying, Europe and other countries have tried on with lasers and other things, and they have some partial success in connecting satellites to satellites by using lasers. They're also trying to do communication with the ground using lasers. That has advantages for defense. I mean, you can't capture those signals, you can't intercept those signals, and you have huge, humongous amounts of bandwidth, okay? So looking at alternate mechanisms of communication between the satellites and from satellite to ground, from to a hub, effectively to a hub, is going to play a critical role. That's one thing. So another thing that is this bent pipe satellites. I think in another 5-6 years, the bent pipe satellites era is going to get done, okay? I think what we call them as dumb satellites. I think going forward, satellites are going to become intelligent. There is going to be processing power on the satellites. So how do you pack processing power in the satellites? How do you develop processors that are space grade? How do you develop AI at the edge that you can put in a satellite? That is a very critical technology that we should also have. Third thing is this notion of interception. Okay, as satellites are growing, I think recently there was an article where I read that our one of our friendly neighbors have put a lot of satellites on our country. So the thing is, this is going to happen, and there's nothing you can do about it. The question is, how can we, what is the mechanism by which we can understand that they're doing something like that, and can we do something to stop it? Okay? So this interception technologies and monitoring technologies, I think we should have a independent strategic development on these kind of things. Quantum communications on satellites is going to be a reality in a few more years. Okay, it's already, there has been technological demonstrations, but scaling up to the satellite is what is going to happen, and I think there are some minor engineering issues for it. Nothing very road blocking, so that's going to happen. Okay, so this QK, I mean, quantum communication is going to come. I mean, I don't know how that is going to, I mean, at least for strategic purposes, it's going to be very important. And one last thing I want to tell about this timing thing. Everything on 5G, 6G, any infrastructure, this timing is one of the most critical things. Okay, your navigation, I mean, recently there was this article that there was a problem of aeroplanes on Delhi airport, okay? So timing is a very, very critical thing. I think for whatever be the reason, India hasn't paid enough attention to it. They have tried to do something, but as Khyati was pointing out, it was a one-off an effort, it was not, we should have a vision for 20 years. This is a long-term, time is not going to become less important 20 years later. Okay, time is going to be more important. When 6G comes, you're going to see that we're going to depend a lot on timing from satellites to ensure that 6G works. Okay, and everywhere this is going to happen. I think, again, across India, I think there are very, very few pockets of excellence in understanding timing, both in building these devices, both in understanding these networks, that how you develop this timing. That we require a lot more people on this. That is very, very critical. Finally, it all boils down to, do you have enough manpower to work on all of these things and make them resilient? I think finally it boils down to this, sir.
Right, I think we have, with IIT Madras around, we should have all these people who will be working. And when you talked about friendly, I wanted to say it was an unfriendly neighbor. But yeah, but the point is, even if somebody launches, I think I appreciate the point that you're coming to, that so what if this guy launches? Is there something that we can do to jam his ground stations, the receiver stations and things like that? Or we can spoof around. I mean, that's a very interesting sort of subject that we can go into. I want to ask just 2 questions, and then I want to throw it open to the audience. If you were to invest 10,000 crores in just one space capability that can be transformational, what would that be?
I would put my money on LEOs. GEOs is Okay, I mean, that's a national priority. I think governments can do that. I mean, but I think LEO is where the money is. LEO small satellite. I think, see, one thing, I develop communication systems. When I develop a communication system, if I want to try out something, all I have to do is go to one building, put one base station there, put another building, one base station, and then just try it out. That's how we develop the systems. But when it comes to satellite, I'm developing something for satellites. The first bottleneck for me is, how do I try this? I mean, to fly a satellite is like a $4 million thing, and I have to wait for 5 years before I get something to just test out, okay? Of course, there are equipment to do, and the thing is, this whole cost of the satellites has to go down tremendously down, and it should be accessible for a lot of us. I think that is where we should put our money, and I mean, I think Elon Musk is not a fool. Let me put it that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think he's done well. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that is the key point that is a takeaway. Say we should invest in LEO. I think that's going to be a lifesaver for us. And Professor, you see, when you talked about resilience and all that, I think it's not about building stronger satellites, but it is about building smarter networks. I think that's the point that I was trying to take away from you. And before I open it to the audience, Khyati, I'm going to throw a small little question to you. What is the biggest threat to space security? Is it technological, geopolitical, or regulatory?
Yeah. So I believe technological, because technology is always advancing, but then who manages the technology, it is then geopolitical in nature. So it's a combination of both. I can't choose either of it.
I want to argue against. Absolutely. Okay. So from a technology perspective, I can give you in writing on a bond paper that India has all the technologies we require to build any of this sophisticated thing. Starlink is not that sophisticated, by the way. Okay? We can build it. It's just a question of people having the willpower and the intent to do this. Paisa, to be the correct thing. I think that I don't have.
Sir, since you mentioned Leo constellation, I just like to share. While I was traveling to Frankfurt, I was traveling to actually US, so I received a mail for this conference, and the paper I was going to argue it was a US Naval War College thing, that Leo constellation might not decrease, but in case increase the crisis, especially in the Indo-Pacific, because then I had a lot of points paid out. And then you said we should invest in LEO. So I understand we should invest in LEO, but there is a parallel side to it that it might at times be counterproductive to the original core. But I'll share the paper with you, then your feedback will be great then.
Counterproductive to LEO. Good, Khyati. I mean, you have taken it to the next level. So, I mean, I'm tempted to ask you one more question, sir. I'm sorry, because you brought the heat up, you brought the tempo so very well. So I want to ask you, if a hostile actor wanted to disrupt a satellite network without physically attacking it, what would be the most likely attack vector?
See, one thing is, satellites are, robust, I told you. I think if I were to attack someone, I would attack the ground stations first. Okay? It's easier because it's connected to the network, so it's easier, it's much more easier. Then, of course, you can do activities like jamming and other things. But I think the vulnerabilities are mostly in the ground layer, much more compared to a satellite, because satellite is, at this point, are mostly bent pipe. There's nothing in there. You just transmit, it just comes down. It's like a water pipe.
Satellite as a water pipe. Ladies and gentlemen, the floor is yours. Please ask your questions, but shoot it to these guys here. Yeah, please, sir. General Chandele, sir. Somebody pass a mic to General Chandele, please.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Yes. So starting from counterproductive LEO is being opposed I learned by the armed forces, particularly the Air Force, right? Just a statement. Our friendly neighbor has a revisit time of 13 minutes over cities like Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai. We have ambitious plans, but we are basically doing Kadamtal while others are moving forward. There is a PLI scheme for every sector, semiconductors, electronic components. I don't think there is a PLI for space.
Right.
And also, there is this question of Atmanirbharta, very good, but if you want to have sovereign assets in space, it will take a long time. So it is better to go for sovereign control, that the assets may not be yours totally, but you have the control over them. So these are just some comments, and we'll seek answers from Professor Khyati, Professor and Khyati.
Sir, I have to explain to both of them. You know, the fundamental laws of physics force into, work done is, what is work done? When force is applied and there is a moment. So when the general was speaking about a Kadamtal, it is, when you keep moving at the same place, the work is not done. Okay, sir, all yours.
Okay. So I'll talk about the strategic thing. See, we have this dilemma in everywhere. Okay, this is not something that's just for space. If we start building things by ourselves, it's going to take a long time. Okay, so when we say build your system, it doesn't mean that you build every nut and bolt of it. That's not what it means. Okay, so we have different tiers. You start with a system, then you go submodule, then you go chips. You do so. But what I'm saying is that we should have control of the system. We should know what it is doing. Okay, that is the most critical thing.
That's exactly what I said.
That is, I'm just reiterating, sir. I'm just reiterating. Reiterating that. So that is the philosophy we should follow. If we start doing everything from scratch and wait till we build everything, it's going to take like 30 years. That's not what the idea is. The idea is that what we have now, we understand, we dust it up quite a bit, put them together. Next phase, do something more. But the thing is, it should be a vision. It should not be a one-time activity. It should be a program for 30 years. It should not be a program for like next 2 years, you do something, you put like five satellites and then say we are great. That's not what it is.
So Khyati is not looking at me, therefore I'm not giving her the mic.
I agree with all the points.
She agrees. Okay, good. So anybody else? Yeah, you wanted to? Oh, yeah. Quite a lot of. Where's the mic? Okay, there is one there.
Hello.
Boldo. Carry on. We can hear you.
So, with a small note, I believe that space is a space for peace, not a piece of war. Peace for war, okay? So, in that note, what is stopping us from developing a global policy? And if you ask me what is threatening the satellites, right? According to me, there are two threats to the satellites. One is human nature, and another one is solar storms. So, these are the two greatest threat for me. So what I'm saying is, if we really want to build a resilient satellite networks, why don't we go for a global policy, just like, let's take there's a global policy for nuclear armaments, controlling them, right? So if we can have such a policy around the world, initiative of something like that, separating the civilian networks from the defense network completely away, so that it can be shared by all of them. It will reduce the number of satellites, so that we'll be far away from the Krishna syndrome, Krishna activity things initiating, right, igniting. And also, if one side of the solar storm, due to solar storm, if one side of the satellite is being attacked, the other side is still there, which can be combinedly utilized. Lot of advantages in that. Instead of just fighting for the race to increase the number of satellites, as every country is going on.
Thank you so much for that question. I don't know if the question is for Ursula or it is for the United Nations. I'm not too sure. But you see, no, but the point is, I would love it to be, segregated between defense and commercial application. and I would love to do commercial application which can be used for defense. You see, this is exactly what countries are sort of investing in, taking advantage of a global policy like that and using it. You know, when you talk about uranium for peaceful purposes, it's about that. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I think we are coming to a close. If there is a compelling question, I can take one or two and then we'll close the, yeah.
Good afternoon. Myself, Budamgunta from MERA Department of Space Studies.
Sir.
So I want to ask that the monitoring satellites, whether they are boon or bane to us. Like on the one hand, they are helping us in tracking the climate disasters and all that can occur. But on the other hand, they are also creating the privacy issues and security damages to our countries and all. So I want to ask that.
Okay. Any other question? I'll pick up the questions first. Yeah. There.
Hi, this is Ram from Aerospace System. So my question is to Professor Ganti. So as you mentioned about we are well equipped with the technology. So what is your take on academia front, where research is going on? Maybe there are a lot of things are happening, but how it is going to be translated into a product which can be used? So how the academia is gearing
Right.
on that?
So that's a fantastic question, but first, boon or bane? Yeah.
Nothing in itself is boon or bane. It depends on how we are using it. And once we have acquired capability, we would always like to use it to our advantage. And especially in terms of, suppose sir mentioned about policy. Of course, we will have a policy when the two great powers we have currently have developed themselves to the fullest, and then they suddenly realize that we now don't want other countries to have that kind of capability. So likewise, nothing is boon or bane as such in, defense or security domain. It is all about capability, how fast we acquire it, and then to what advantage are we putting it. So we might be using it for security, but we are also using it to harm some other country, and vice versa.
It's always a boon. When you create a bane somewhere else, it's your boon. So nothing to worry. So that is the fundamental question. So, yeah, sir.
So regarding the academic thing, so we have done this for 5G. Okay, so government has funded a huge project. We have translated that to products. We have given it to startup companies. They have done transfer of technology. That has pushed a lot of companies to start thinking about 5G indigenously and building stuff. Okay, now companies like Tejas Networks who have developed 4G now are developing 5G. I think that problem is not such a big deal. We now know how to do this. At least most of the bigger IITs know how to do this. IICs and other people also know how to do this. That can be solved. The more important question is, people should start, in academia, at least from the communication perspective, people are not still thinking about space. Still, when you say communication, it's always wireless communication, 5G, 6G, or Wi-Fi. Space communication still is non-exist, almost close. The problems there are very similar to what we solve. We can solve those problems because we study them, from so many years. The only thing is people are not focusing on them, that's all.
That means we are not ready with the technology yet, right?
No, there's a difference. I can build you a space-grade modem any day you want. You come to me, okay? There is no question about it. We are 100% confident. The question is I'm not focusing on it because there's no program to do that. Very simple. It's a program. Technology and programs are different. Know-how and programs are different. If you give me 100 crores tomorrow, government says you build the next DVB S2X, I will build and give it to you.
That's a very powerful statement, ladies and gentlemen. Let us have a very big round of applause to Dr. Radha Krishna Ganti, and I think that's so nice of you to have brought that out. We have that type of a capability. So, ladies and gentlemen, very, very reluctantly, I want to bring this session to a close, and to which I want to ask one question to the audience and to everybody here. If we were to be sitting on the same panel in 2035, what is that one decision that we should make as a nation to be proud of and say, we told you that in 2026? What should that be? Anybody. Audience, yes. It's a very wonderful audience we have today.
Have ground-based time synchronization. Don't depend on satellite.
Okay?
That's one. I think this one, you have that one, everything.
Yeah, because today all your time infrastructure is dependent on satellites.
GNSS.
You have an oscillator and you have a GPS or a GNSS antenna. So the first thing, to answer your question, if China wants to attack us, the Baidu satellites have a software-defined radio. They will come and they will simply mimic a NAVIC or a GPS. They will hit the time, your 5G network will go down, your power grids will go down, your stock exchanges will go down, and all the fancy equipment that Bharat Electronics sells to the defense markets, all their ground-based radars will go down because the time will go for a toss. So you need to have, as a nation, time that is through
Timing.
the terrestrial
We
network.
should have a national policy on timing.
There is no
National
I've
policy
gone
on
to,
timing.
I've gone to DRDO 2 labs, I've gone to NPL, I've gone to DSA, I've gone to NSCS, I've gone to ISRO. Everybody is doing their one small thing, but there is no national PNT authority. We need a national PNT authority.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to quote from the Bhagavad Gita again and close the session. Uttared atmana atmanam na atmanam avasadayet atmane atmano bandhur atmane ripuratmanah. What it means is, Uttared atmana atmanam. Elevate yourself by yourself. Atmana atmanam, by your own self. Elevate yourself by your own self. Na atmanam avasadiyet. Never underestimate your own capabilities. Na atmanam avasadiyet. Atmane atmano bandhur. It is yourself who will be your friend. Atmane ripuratmanah. If you don't do that, it will be your enemy. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it was been a fantastic session with two of our fantastic speakers, Professor Ganti from IIT Madras, Khyati, who is on her way to the US to present some paper and oppose all the Leo thing that we talked about today. And historically, nations protect roads, we need roads, ports, railways, power grids, telecommunication, etc. And space has joined the list. The challenge before is not to build satellites, but build resilient, secure, sovereign satellites. And I think with this, I thank all of you for having been such a fantastic audience. And sir, thank you so much for bringing about energy into this whole thing. And Khyati, I think you ignited the whole thing, and I think it went off very well. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was one thought-provoking session indeed, and thank you to our moderator himself and these esteemed speakers. We would just request one photo for our SIA-INDIA purpose, and then I will set you free. And then we meet again at lunch. Just one picture, yeah. I maybe raise and